See if anybody has a special spoken request.
We haven't heard anything from Louise. Is she doing good, or does anybody know how she's doing?
Well, she felt really bad last night when I talked to her, but I don't talk to her today. But she did not feel good at all.
Let's remember Louise.
COVID.
Let's continue to remember her.
Kevin's sister has been battling breast cancer for 17 years, and they just recently told her that it has spread to her liver and her lungs. She started chemo the other day, and she doesn't feel like she can handle it anymore. So just pray for her. She's got to make a decision on whether or not she's going to continue treatment.
Okay, let's remember that.
Remember Amy, when she left the hospital the other day with the flu so bad, the very next day, Dr. Girl from the Heart Center called. They had seen her echo, and he says that she may need a new pacemaker or changing the meds to keep the fluid away. So she goes Tuesday to the Heart Center.
Okay.
So remember her.
Let's remember Amy.
Continue to pray for Wallace Mullins.
All right, remember that.
Steve, I've got a childhood friend reached out to me that just going through some things in her life, and just want it's kind of, I guess, an unspoken prayer request for their privacy, but I guess for me, they've been reaching out more lately, and it's, God's not a big part of their life. I know. And I guess for me, like, I want you to remember them, what they're going through, but I guess God give me the door of strength to be able to share the gospel with them, for them in their time of need.
All right, remember that. We don't know their names, but God does.
Do you remember her now, right? She just got over COVID for the third time. Now she's got bronchitis and an ear infection. So remember her. She had a lot going on here. Most of all, she's
All right,
through all this, God, still love you.
that's right. We'll be praying for that.
Maybe I decided prayers this week. I anticipated being kind of interesting week, so just remember us this week that rely on God.
Remember that. Might be that way for a lot of folks this week, so just keep the school principals, administrators, and all that in your thoughts this week. If there's nobody else, I'm sure we all have unspoken requests. I won't ask any special one to lead us.
Okay, so tonight is, if you're visiting with us, it's a special night. It's a different night. What we're going to do now is I've got not a PowerPoint, but like a video from the photos. And I want to just explain a little bit before we get into the photos. Mount Olive Church is committed to the commission of the Lord to take the gospel near and abroad. That takes a lot of sacrifices in prayer, devotion, financial sacrifices. And so everybody that's been involved with any of those, whether it's card ministry, prayers, packing shoe boxes, you're collectively part of us fulfilling the Great Commission, and that is to take the gospel in many different places, in many different ways. So this particular trip, obviously it's a little more fearful because, you're getting on a plane during COVID, and you have to jump through all the hoops, you have to get tested, and we had one that did the wrong test, and he didn't get to go. That was the night, we found that out the night before. Miss Katie Woods, she tested positive for the flu, and her trip was taken from her. And so there's a lot of different variables. So then we get on the bus, and we have to travel to Washington, D.C. because flight tickets are outrageous. And we have to go catch a foreign company called Avianca. Mr. John, would you stand up, please? John Mullins deals with Avianca. They do not speak English. Their website doesn't work, and John worked extremely hard and directed and planned this trip. And Brother John, we love you and we appreciate you. And he has to put up with the pastor when the pastor wants to fix everything immediately and it can't be fixed. And I appreciate you. And we know each other. We love each other. And he is a big part of what goes on. So we get on the plane and, we fly out and we land. And, of course, my anxiety starts of walking through customs. It was the easiest going through the customs and getting our bags as we've ever had. So we were like, man, this trip is going to be amazing. Well, it was. So then we stay in the night in the motel. We get up the next day early. I think it was like 5:30 or 6, continental breakfast. And then we travel from the capital, which is a third world country, but it's the capital. I mean, it's the capital of a third world country. So it's, we stay in a Best Western. That's not like ours, but it's okay. We travel as far as you can north to the northern part where the Honduras border is, to the outskirts, kind of like Wise, Virginia, maybe a little. And then when you get there, we get immediately off the bus, and we just pull off the side of the road, and the village people come out, and they come out in groves. Like, they're hungry over there. They don't have missionaries coming. And, I mean, they just line the streets, and we just top right onto it. Like, they say share the gospel. So I do a little question and answer service. We share the gospel, and it went great. Of course, I was handing out gifts to those that answered the questions, so they were all answering questions. Then everybody just lined up, and we started handing out, and of course people just started bawling at the outset of seeing the needs. And so then a typical day, and you're going to see it, is we get up, we do our devotion, somebody leads us in devotion, we go to the radio station. There at the radio station, there's 3 different countries listening, and we have translators, so we tell our testimonies. Of course, I was the only minister there, so I would share a little sermonette at the end of it. And so we would share the gospel every day to that many people, and people would tell their life stories. And it's incredibly moving when you go on a trip like that and you get to hear other people's stories that you didn't even know who they were really sitting across the pew. So after the radio station, then what do we do with that? We'd always go in the village that day. We didn't do work, did we? We went to... Okay, yeah, thank you. So during the radio station, you'll see manifest bags. If you gave money for this trip, it probably went to the manifest bags. So what you're going to see is packing, I think there's toilet paper, oil, beans, a Ziploc baggie of beans, a Ziploc baggie of rice, sugar, salt, coffee. And so it's just a bag. And so we load those up, and we have them ready. We go into a village. When you get into the village and you get on the ground, there's different activities you can do. You can do soccer. I actually painted fingernails this time for the first time. And the little girl, she was very gracious because I think one of them would let Renee finish hers. It was so bad. But AC helped me, and I was wiping them off, and that girl was just a giggling and a laughing and looking at me with those eyes and laughing. And you can paint fingernails. You'll see some pictures of blowing bubbles. We threw water balloons. Dawn don't really like that, but we did. That's Rod's style. We had water balloon fights. We played soccer. We have these little rockets. So you engage. You earn the right to be heard. You engage. And then once you engage and you kind of get all the village in the meantime, they're fixing the soup. And so then once the soup's about ready, we did our skit. And so when we do the skit, we take props and everything. And you're going to see this skit was Peter walking on the water. Peter getting out of the boat, Peter walking on the water, and we shared the gospel with that story. And then you feed the soup. You pray over the soup and you feed the soup. You load the truck up, and then you do the throwouts. So I cleared my closets. I thought I was going to clear them, but I really didn't. I've still got a lot left, but I went and I found everything that I had not put on in 2 years. And you'd be amazed at what, a lot of times you'll see the pictures on here and you say, well, they got a nice shirt on. That's because they knew the missionaries were coming. And a missionary had thrown that shirt out to them several months ago, and they've saved it because that's the best they got for a lot of times. And so, you'll see MTO shirts when you're down there in the village. You'll see a UVA-Wise basketball shirt. And so that's the throwouts. That's when we leave and we throw out. So you're going to see pictures. I want to explain all that. You're going to see pictures. I think there's pictures of Stevie. You can see how hungry they are. They're lined up as far as you could see, and then the men got in the back of the line. We don't give the manifest bags to the men, only to the women, only to the women of the household. And so, of course, the men got in there and they're trying. You can see how hungry they are. You'll see pictures of soup, and you'll see how hungry they are right now over there because their missionaries have not been coming because of COVID. You're going to see us sharing the skit on these pictures. You're going to see the radio station. So I wanted to explain some of that. You're not going to really get what these pictures mean to us, but maybe it gives you an idea of what we do and what Mount Olive does when we're over there. And I can tell you something. I'm not bragging. Don will tell you. They know when MTO comes. He'll tell you, and he don't make a difference between groups, but he says we're always prepared. We got plenty of stuff, and we just leave a big impact when we go. You can be proud and know that when we send a team over there, we really make an impact, and they're starting to remember our names. They remember Miss Rose. They found out that if they just call out Rose, then she starts handing stuff out off the truck. You're not supposed to do that. Because then it's like everybody, give me. One of the translators told her she keeps stepping on a beehive. Because, when you do that. So, and of course they call me, what do they call me? Milo. Yeah, there's one village there. They think that means bad player, bad soccer player. So as soon as I get off the truck, they're like, Milo, he's back, So we're really making an impact. So first of all, I wanted to share those things so you can kind of see what's going on. So Brother Zach's going to play the picture album here.
Return to the love, the one who's broken, the one who's torn me apart. You strike down to bind me up. You say you do it all in love, that I might know you in your suffering. Though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship, sing a song to the one who's all I need.
ask anybody have any questions about anything they've seen there. Anybody have any questions?
I guess I couldn't wait to get
Well, that's all right. It's about in the 90s, Brother Jeff. It dropped to about the 80s at night. Yeah. And so it was really, really comfortable at night. We did hook up with some fireworks. And, of course, Stevie and Roz style. I was not feeling well. And so every night I come home, not feeling well, I was just really tired. So every night we come home, I kind of went in the house. So I came out one night and they were shooting fireworks and had cinder blocks and stuff. I said, okay. I felt a little better the next night. I came out and the cinder blocks were gone. I said, that's interesting. Well, they started shooting and all you could see is, well, next thing you know, they're shooting at us. One hit my foot. It tipped over, and so it started shooting at us. And I just remember hearing the translator say, Johanna, which was his wife, Johanna, you better run. And so we did have some fun. Of course, well, okay. So now this is our team, and most are here tonight. Wes is from Clintwood. They partnered up with us. Wes Sloan's the one in the back, and then Danny Abraham. I thought he might be here tonight. He's a hoot. He's from Clintwood. And then the one standing down here beside Roz is Chloe Hayes, and you should know the rest. And that's Roberto at the far end over here. He's the lead translator. So I'm going to start tonight with my God moments, and then hand it over to the next. So when your slides come up, you can come up and give your God moments. All right, so the card ministry, I just want to give a shout out to Lisa. I read mine on the way up there on the bus, and I can't remember who was around me. I said, this is either Lisa or Deb. And it was Lisa. Lisa had a card made, not just written, but she spent a lot of time in prayer, and she had a card made, and then she had a little business card with the verse made also, very professionally done. Well, the thing about it, she put that much time in prayer is every day, that card that Lisa prayed over, every day, I needed it. And so on God Moments Day 2, Roberto, so we have these God moments like we're doing tonight, not as long as we're going to do tonight, but we have a night, at night we sit around and we say, okay, what did God say to you today? On day 2, now I want you to see how these cards work. On day 2, so I had to speak at the radio each day. And on day 2 that night, Roberto said, guys, I want to share something. Someone talks about their life, their problems, and their stress, and they say, this is my problem and my stress. And he said, that's a lie from the enemy because your burdens don't have to be your burdens. And he quoted Matthew 11:28 that says, come unto me, all you that burden and heavy laden, I'll give you rest. And so I sat up all night. That's what happens when you go over. It's like God 24/7. And God kept moving on me about, what would that mean if you lived in Nicaragua? What would that mean, if you were sitting in your little hut in Nicaragua and you looked out and a man had a cart coming behind them, but they were carrying their piles of wood on their shoulder, but they could easily just put it on their cart. Why are you carrying that burden when you don't have to? All night long. So I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to speak on that. I get up the next morning, open up the sealed envelope, and guess what my verse is? Matthew 11:28. So that's how when you're doing these cards, you don't know until you go. But man, what a ministry that is. And of course, that's what I shared on the radio station that day. So I just want to tell Lisa how much I'm so thankful for your cards, and it was just wonderful. And all right, and so my God moment, so I just want to share that with you. Now, my God moment was this. So, my deal was I don't want to be sick over there. And I started on Monday evening with a sore throat and sinuses, and it usually happens to me over there. And so I immediately started taking my prednisone and Z-Pack, and about Thursday, Friday, I was feeling pretty good, because last time I went, the dust and stuff, I came back, and I was probably the sickest with my allergies I'd ever been. Well, this week, I felt pretty good. Well, when we tested to come back, I tested positive. And so for COVID, so that meant I had to stay there. And half the team who tested negative was coming home. And then the other half of the team who tested positive. Now, the thing about that is, I knew we were coming home, but it's you don't get to come home until God tells you can come home. And so we let half the team had to leave. And of course, some of us had to stay, and I had to stay and lead with those that were there. And that was hard. That was a little difficult. We had to try to navigate with John how to get when we could come back according to CDC quarantine guidelines, and had to do all that stuff. And when can we get a plane flight back, and the money. It was challenging. And so this was a hard day for us. I made everybody that had to stay. Pam will tell you. I went in her bedroom and said, "Pam, get up. We're not sitting around today. We're going to go paint." And this is Roberto's house. So we went out and we painted on the house, and it was just a heavy day. It was a heavy spiritual day like I'd never experienced. And you got to know that when God's up to something, the Bible says we're not battling with flesh and blood. We're battling with spiritual principalities, guys. That is spiritual influences and warfare that comes at our emotions. It comes at us in different ways. And I experienced a battle on this day like I had never experienced in my life. There was just a sense of hopelessness, a spiritual heaviness of hopelessness. And I would just be sitting around and I would just start like tearing up. And I never battled that before. And so when I got home, thinking back on it, God told me something. He said, all these times you've been going over there, you've talked about going into those villages and their faces changing because when the missionary comes, they're bringing hope and the hope of Christ. Yeah, they're going to play with us, but they're going to give us food. And TJ, you've talked about when you get on that truck to leave, you see their faces sink. But I had no idea. I had no idea what it was like to live in a village in a country where every day was hopelessness. As a dad, it's hopeless. I never experienced that. We're living in the greatest country in the world, and every day we get up, we are full of hope. There's always hope in America. The Church of the United States is based upon hope. But God let me go through those couple of days so I could really experience what it was like for those people, for when the missionaries show up, and then when the missionaries go home, and what the hope of Christ really means to people who have no hope. So the Bible says, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts and be ready always to give an answer to every man that's seeking a reason of hope. And so that was my God moment. Now the last thing is this, what I learned. Brother John, what I learned, because me and John are a lot alike. We like to control things. So I told you we flew in late. We stayed in a motel, and then we got on the bus, and we drove about 2.5 hours in. We didn't have time to do devotion, so I stood up, and they didn't really want to hear it. They weren't ready. They were tired. But I said, hey, everybody on the bus, listen up. Stop the music. We're going to do a devotion. And God gave me this verse. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. And in good preacher fashion, Brother Andrew, I said, you know what that means? The Lion of the tribe of Judah said, no matter what you face, no matter what you go through on this trip, know that in the end, God's going to work it out. And that was good preacher talk till about Friday. And then God changed the plans, didn't He, Brother John? And I'm calling John stressed out and this and that. And he's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I don't know, John. I don't think it's going to be okay. And then when I finally got in the vehicle, I remembered that day on that bus, the pastor being preacher talk and sharing this verse, and then me struggling with, is it going to work out or not? And then in the end, God says, hey, I've got you. I learned a deeper trust in the Lord that I could never, ever experience other than through what He allowed me to experience. Okay, who's next? Whoever this is.
that's hard to follow. Okay, so I'll start off with, it was the night before Christmas, and I couldn't sleep. I had such a bad feeling about this trip. I mean, I've been over there 5 or 6 times. I've never experienced that before in my life, and it terrified me. Not to the point where I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to go. Like, I mean, of course I'm going. But I just had that in the back of my mind of, like, I don't know what it is, but something's just making me so anxious about this. And like Dad was talking about the card ministry, you all have no idea what it means. And I'd like to thank Dalton for doing mine because they were awesome. Because the first day I opened it, and this is what it says: fear is the devil's greatest tool. That's why the phrase fear not is in the Bible 365 times, one for every day. And as you travel today and you prepare for what you might say, I challenge you to not hold back. Be open about the things you're struggling with in your life or challenges that impact yourself. Often what we hold back is the one thing that someone needs. So my God moment for that night was, me feeling that, and then I wasn't feeling 100%, and I was like, I just hope that through this that God can use me in some way. Even though I feel like I'm not 100% going into these villages, whatever I do, I hope that God can use me for the best of my ability. So these are pictures of the, what day was that? When we were going to the villages and witnessing, day 4. And so the one on the very end is me showing the gospel to a little boy. The one in the middle was we had went and found this girl. We were back into the village, and Pastor Ray explained to us that she couldn't have children. So I was able to share with her Katie and Stevie's story about how they couldn't have children, and now they have 4. And then we were able to actually find her again so Stevie could talk to her. But like I said, I didn't feel like 100%, and me and the Dad had actually tested positive on Friday. And that was Friday night, I think, with us just chilling. But yeah, that shows you how we felt. But Friday, after the day was over and we did all that, my card said, I don't know what you'll be doing today, but for some reason I feel like you needed some encouragement and strength. Don't let the enemy win the mind battles that defeat you. So after that, I was like, you know what? This wasn't exactly what we thought was going to happen, but I want to try to be encouragement because this isn't the worst thing that could happen. Like, we were still in Nicaragua. It was great. It didn't feel 100%, but I'd rather quarantine there than I would anywhere else. But, being over there, and I just feel like sometimes our community in this church doesn't really know exactly what these two go through. They are an amazing, they're amazing in my life. Amazing, just willing to do whatever God needs them, and the will for Him, they are there. And the mission doesn't stop this week. The mission doesn't stop when they come home. The mission is every day. And I appreciate them so much. And it shows me of what I need to do in my life and how I need to pursue God. But I say all this because, if you feel like this is something God is calling you to do, and maybe it's not this, maybe it's something else in your life that God's pursuing you to do, the excuse of getting over there and getting sick, it's not a great excuse anymore. Because you'll be okay. God will take care of you. So my verse is 2 Corinthians 12 and 9 through 10. Let me find it. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for the strength is made perfect in my weakness. For most gladly, therefore, I will rather glory in my I can't speak. And the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I will take pleasure in my infirmities and reproaches in necessities and persecutions and Lord, these are a lot of big words. I should have read it before I come up here. For Christ's sake, for when I'm weak, I am strong.
So first of all, I want to clarify that we took COVID with us.
Yeah, that's my fault.
No, not us particular, the whole team. We don't know, but we did not get it over there. Though in the villages and stuff, it was not present. But through Christmas times and being with our families, we know that once we got over there, several people connected to us tested positive while we were there. So don't think that we went over there and got sick. We took it with us, and there was a big move here in the United States at that time. So we didn't know it. We all had to test negative before we left. It just, this new variant kind of tested later. But I will say this, if it was me and Emma over there, we probably would have been in trouble because I'm a little bit negative and she is too. But I turned and looked at Hannah on one day and she could tell I was struggling. She said, "Dad, think of it this way." She said, "If we're going to have to quarantine, I love quarantine in Nicaragua on a hammock." Sometimes our kids teach us sometimes, don't they? So I was thankful for that. All right, next person. Be Hannah. Hey, Ross.
Well, that's hard to follow. Let's see. This is in San Francisco, and the picture on the left was actually in June, and the picture on the right was this time. That's the lady that I danced with last year to This Little Light of Mine, and she recognized me. I was sitting on the back of the truck playing with the kids, and she came up and waved like, "Do you know who I am?" And I jumped off the truck and hugged her, and she had the translator tell me that she had been praying for me. It's an awesome thing to remember the faces and the people that you meet in the villages, but when they recognize you, there's something different and very special about that maybe you made just a little bit of a difference or a small impact on them for a brief moment, or that maybe you did something at some point to brighten their day. I often think about those people in the villages, but I never would imagine that they would think about me or even pray for me. And am I supposed to switch up? My verse was Acts 16. "And a vision appeared to Paul in the night, and there stood a man of Macedonia and prayed, saying, 'Come over here to Macedonia and help us.'" And where's my other one? I had another one somewhere. Wait a minute. Huh? No, the mustache. Oh. Okay, well, you saw the one where the little boy had the mustache. And I put several packs of mustache stickers in my pocket before we went to Pasquala, and that's a village. And they tell you to never just randomly hand things to people, but sometimes I hand things to people. And so I put all these little boys, I put every mustache that I had on those little boys, and they would go and they would show their friends. So then their friends would come back and want a mustache, and then they would go show their friends, and I put until I totally ran out. And then that's when you have to say no mas, and they like tap you on the shoulder, and they're like, no mas. Well, we ran out, and no mas, we have no more. But so we got back on the bus, and the translator said, she looked at me and she just like shaking her head, and I was like, "What?" She said, "Have you ever heard you stepped on a beehive?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, you stepped on a beehive." And I was like, "Well, you tell me I caused some pandemonium or panic or an uproar or a commotion?" She was like, "Yeah, sorta." And I apologized. I was like, "Sorry, but I'd probably do it again," just because I like to change things up and have a good time. And if we're taking some of MTO to Nicaragua, we'll always be causing a commotion. And another verse I had was 1 Peter 3, 8 through 12. And this is actually from the Message, but it says, "Be agreeable, be sympathetic, be loving, be compassionate, be humble." That goes for all of you, no exceptions. No retaliation, no sharp-tongued sarcasm. Instead, bless. That's your job, to bless. You'll be a blessing, and you'll also get a blessing.
to follow all three of the McAmuses. This was my first time going, and I was real stressed out about it a little bit. And I'd never considered going on a mission trip because I was like, I'm not a good flyer, and I knew there was no way that I could do a 4-hour flight. So in June, the night before that Stephen and Sissy were leaving to go to Nicaragua, Addison was a little upset, and so I said, Sis, do you want to go outside and pray? And she said yes. And so we went out there, and I told her how proud everybody was, and we prayed. And I said, how about if Nana goes back with you the next time you go? And she said, yes, Nana, please. And so I was thinking that I would have a year to prepare for my trip, but little did I know that when they came home, they were like, Nana, we're going to Nicaragua in December. And I'm like, oh, Lord, help me. But I had so many people praying for me, and I appreciate that. And the Lord just gave me such a peace about it. But my God moment was in this village here. It's called El Laredo. And in 1998, Hurricane Mitch came through and flooded it and destroyed everything there, I think. And so the Red Cross went in and built these houses, and they had little sidewalks, and all these little houses were on just a little square, streets. And they were the nicest houses that we would see all week long. So we went to 4 houses. We divided up into groups, and we went to 4 houses and prayed. And after we had finished, we were getting ready to go find Stephen because he was looking for Nelson and the barber. So we were like, let's go see what's going on with them. And as we did, this lady, her name is Gregoria, she came up to us and she said, nobody's come to my house to pray. And we said, okay, well, we'll go. So we go. And I was going to go forward just a minute here. So we go down to the end of this street, and, I'm thinking, okay, we'll just be right down here. Well, then we turn right and start up a hill, and we just keep going, and we keep going, and we keep going, and I just can't even begin to tell you all the things that were going through my head as we were walking up through there. But when we got there, wrong way. When we got there, her husband and her baby were there, and that was her kitchen. And she didn't have a house like everybody else did. Her house had sticks and plastic wrapped around it and stuff. She didn't have one of the block houses. Hers was way off the beaten path. And so Wes and Ross and Danny and I were on our team, and it was Wes's time, and Wes asked her, he said, can we pray for you? What would you like us to pray about? And she said that she'd lost her mom 4 months ago, and that she was just having a hard time. And so we all prayed for her. And after we left, we went to check out and see what was going on with Stephen, because that's where all the fun was. And so Roz and I decided we were going to take her some money and go back up there. And we did. And when we got there and handed her money, she said that she appreciated it, but she needed our prayers so much more than she needed that money. And I can't end here without talking about Cece. She was giving her God moment one night at the compound, and she was talking about how in June that she had used the whiteboards, and we hadn't seen any whiteboards. And so after we finished, Don said, where are those whiteboards? Get those whiteboards out. So the next day, there she was, not only talking to children, but there was adults around her listening to her share the gospel. And that just makes me so proud. And I just want to say that I can't begin to tell you all how thankful I am that I stepped out of my comfort zone and went on this mission trip. It was the most rewarding week of my life in serving these people in Nicaragua in the villages. And I just want to say, if you've ever thought about it, or, about going or wondering if you could do it, please go. You won't regret it, and it will impact your life forever. If I can do it, anyone can do it. As Nana and I said, if Nana and Nana can do it, anybody can do it. And I just want to thank all of you. There's so many of you that come up and prayed the night before we left, or the Wednesday night before we left. Sheila and Diane and Whitney and Teresa and Peggy and Kay and all my family in Indiana. And I just thank y'all so much for your prayers. My Bible verse is Mark 16:15. And he said unto them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Roz and her tiny hands. For another day.
Hi, everyone. I love to talk, but this is a whole different kind of talking, so just bear with me. My name is Clara Watt. I rededicated my life on October 3rd at Mount Olive, and I got baptized on October 10th. And there was a college ministry probably the next day, something like that. And Hannah got up here, and she showed her Because We Care ministry bracelet and was talking about it. So we get in the car, we're listening to music, and I'm like, tell me more about Nicaragua. Like, what's it like? Just basic talk. Next thing you know, I'm calling my mom. Mom, I'm not coming home for Christmas. I'm going out of the country. She was like, okay. And that leap of faith was something that I've never done before. I'd never been out of the country. But it worked out. But if you know me, the month before, if you mentioned Nicaragua, my eyes were in tears. And the week before, you probably didn't want to talk to me because the devil was doing his work and he was succeeding. But God prevailed, and God showed me that everything was going to be okay. Mount Olive is a great support system. All your prayers, felt them, heard them, and they were there. So we're on the way, and we're on the second plane, and Brooke Colley looks over at me, and I'm nose deep in a plastic bag, just sick to my stomach. It was my fault for not sleeping the night before and thinking I could pull an all-nighter and everything would be fine. Don't pull an all-nighter. It wasn't worth it. But we get to Nicaragua, into that first village, and I tell you, I've never felt God's presence more. I stepped off that bus and knew this is where I needed to be. This was how I wanted to celebrate my Christmas. It was hard to sacrifice not seeing my family and, making sure he got the right COVID test, but I wanted to celebrate Jesus' birthday this way. So that's what I did. So that was in the villages. Those were the kids. That's Roz's tiny hands. This is sharing the gospel, and this is when TJ is right there painting those fingernails. We redid them after, so it was okay. He did good. But my main point in sharing all of this is that I didn't think about it. I just kind of leaped. And that leap is one of the best things I would ever do. I would throw up on a plane 100 times to go back. And, sometimes we don't think about things and just do. And the what ifs and the things that we're worried about before don't matter. The devil does his work, but God prevails every single time. So my verse is Isaiah 45:2. I'll go before you and level the exalted places. I'll break in pieces the doors of bronze and cut through bars of iron. And that was my trip. Thank you.
So this was my second mission trip, and so my goal moment is about sharing the gospel. I had shared the gospel multiple times on my first trip, so sharing it was like a breeze. The first time I shared it was on the second day. I shared it with chalk because I didn't think we had the whiteboards. Then I shared it with the adults. They were standing around waiting for the manifest bags. And I had turned to Joanna and I said, I'm going to share the gospel. We had the whiteboards at this time. We found the whiteboards. I was surprised on how little the adults knew about the gospel. Sharing it with the adults was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. And actually, a couple days before, I think on the day that I shared the gospel the first time, Whitney, who had done my cards, had said, share the gospel, and I don't have it with me, but it was like, how about sharing it with the adults and stuff? And I didn't pay much attention to about it. I was like, okay, well, I don't really feel like doing that, and then I did that. So it was an amazing opportunity to do that because sharing it with them is so much different. And if you ever get a chance to go on a mission trip, go. It's a life-changing experience. So my verse is Mark 16:15. And he said unto them, Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.
Okay. So, I always, Emma's shaking her head at that photo of me and Hannah. I sent that to her while we were gone and told her Hannah was now the #1 rank in the McCamus family, so she didn't like that. But when we go to Nicaragua, it's always a special time just being with the group, and although it's a lot of work and we're there serving, we also do have a good time. When we get there the first day, we're getting ready to rehearse for the skit, and several people immediately, they're trying to figure out who's going to play what character. And there's like 2 or 3 people that said, Devontae's Doubting Thomas. Not sure whether to take that as a compliment or what, but I did play that role, and I tried to play it very well. But during the week, we all worked together in order to accomplish what we were trying to do for that week. And on Thursday, when we were going to El Laredo, which is the village that we went house to house, that morning, they're like, you're splitting up into groups, and you need to try to be with someone that you're not really like buddies with. Like, I couldn't go with Stevie. I don't know why. They think we're friends or something. But they didn't secretly know that on these mission trips, me and Hannah Mac are like this. So everybody, it's like a draft. Everybody's like, you're with me, you're with me, you're with me. So Hannah and I get together and we're like, we're going to go together, but who's going with us? Well, Rayel, we're like, we'll take you and your dad. We're going to take your dad with us. Well, for those of you that don't know, Pastor Ray is like very well known, and he goes into these villages and he can just talk and communicate. So I'm thinking, he's going to take care of everything, and Hannah and I are just going to get to kind of lay back and let him do it, and if we need to pray or something, we'll do that. So we get to the very first house, and he introduces the group or whatever, and like Hannah gets a hat out of the bag, and she's like, all right, here we go. So Hannah immediately became like the leader of our group. She was just not ashamed. She was ready to share the gospel. So that was special to me, that she just kind of was there. And then after she did that, she looked and said, okay, you're going to pray. Like, okay. So then we got like on a rotating schedule at every house. Somebody would pray and somebody would share the gospel and that kind of thing. So we did discipleship training with Dawn a couple of the evenings. And the night before, Dawn had shared that we have to earn the right to be heard. So, I jotted that down and made some notes, but really what that meant to me at that point, I wasn't sure. But the next day when we were going out to these villages, while we were sharing the gospel, we get to this one house, and it was my turn to share the gospel. So I get the hats out, and I share, and then I ask if they want to accept Christ in their heart, and they're like, no, we're not ready. And I'm like, okay, but I did what I was supposed to do. So that was a little disappointing at the time, but that's okay. I'm not sure who did my cards. If you're here, thank you, because that morning, my card says, I'm sure that you have at some point this week felt defeated or knocked down. Don't give in. That was the day that after that, I really felt knocked down and was ready to give in. But it says, get up, knock off the dust, and finish the race. And the verse that they wrote on my card that day was 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 57 through 58. And I'll share that in just a minute. But that same evening, we went to a village, and I actually think this time I stayed in with Pam and Renee and did medicine while they were out engaging and everything like that. So after we were finished, I went outside and we had some hats. So I got in the back of the truck and I think Stevie or TJ once said, okay, Devontae, you're going to share the gospel with these hats. I'd already been rejected once that day, but I was going to try again. So we get the hats out, and I start sharing the gospel, and I start asking questions, and Roz is behind me saying, we've not got that many hats. Only give it to the ones that are really paying attention and answering the questions. So I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to be like, okay, you get this hat, and then a few minutes later, they're like, oh no, there's all kinds of hats. So they go to the other truck, and they get more hats, and I'm able to give out hats to all of the men that were there. But at the end, I asked if anybody wanted to pray the prayer of salvation and accept Jesus into their hearts. Several of the men raised their hands, and they prayed the prayer of salvation with me. In particular, there was this one man that I really know and feel in my heart that he accepted Jesus into his heart that day. So my verse that was on my card that day, and that was for my big God moment, is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58. Therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be firm, immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. So when we go out to these places, we may not see the immediate results, but we are doing what God is calling us to do, and we are planting those seeds, and one day, if not on earth, when we get to heaven, we're going to be able to see the results of those. So I encourage you, if you are interested ever in attending a mission trip, do so, whether it's out of the country, whether it's here in the U.S. If you feel led, like we had never went to houses and knocked on doors. I had done that on, like back home, but I had never done that in foreign country. So that was a little different for us, but it was great. I mean, that's something that we can do here. So I just encourage you that if God's taken on your heart to do something, be sure to follow that calling, and you won't regret it.
Well, that kind of segues into mine pretty good, so. So first, I just wanted to give, you may get it? Okay. First, I just want to give thanks to everybody who donated to the mission team, or supported with the fundraiser, or prayed for us, or wrote cards, or worked behind the scenes to get the trip ready. We literally can't do this stuff without you guys. But to kind of go over what I would like to share, before this trip started, I prayed to be stretched and to be used by the Lord. And, well, He did that, so I'll tell you about it. I'll start by saying the last trip that we went on back in June, that God kind of nudged me to do some things on that trip that I didn't heed to. And so there is really no good excuse for that, but at the time I justified one for myself. And after coming home from that trip, I was pretty convicted about it and got kind of depressed with it too. And I thought, He's not going to give me another chance to go back. So, I prayed for forgiveness and if it was His will to allow me to go back, because I really wanted to. And that I would listen this time. So, so when I found out that I could go back this time, I was thrilled. I was happy. And He showed me just how important those little nudges that He gives you can be. So that leads me to my God moment, which was in La Ceibita is the village name. I think it was a newer one. Everyone was kind of playing with the kids. We had that water balloon fight that we mentioned earlier. And during all this, I kind of noticed these people kind of standing over to the side by themselves. I tried to even get some of those kids to play, and they were just kind of shy to themselves. They didn't really want to play. And so as time went on, I thought to myself, somebody should really go talk to them.
not me, but somebody. So, because I was kind of nervous too, because as an introvert, it's not really a strong suit of mine to just go strike up conversations with other people. So, I mean, eventually I was like, well, I realized the Lord was like, yeah, you should go talk to him. And I was like, okay, I guess. And he didn't really make it easy. You know, I had to go find a translator that was kind of far off. And once I found Johanna, I was like, okay, all right, I'm committed now. I can't tell her to go away. Guess we're going to go do this. So I found out they were all a family together. Their name is the Barella family. That's their last name. And so I was able to share the gospel with them and ask them if they wanted to accept Jesus in their heart. And Johanna translated, and she said back to me that they said, we're ready to receive him. And I was like, all right, we're really doing this right now. Okay. We're doing this right now. So I'm like, they're ready, so I kind of have to pray with them now. So then I start looking for one of the Romans Road cards that we had that had the prayer on it. I'm asking everywhere. There's not one to be found ever. So I ended up using the arrows, the symbols, to explain the gospel again to them, and then prayed with them to accept Jesus in their heart. And this was all God stretching and using me in different ways than he had before. And after reflecting on it, you know, the Lord's doing the work, not me. I just had to be willing to do it. And so I'm glad that I listened. And I went to speak to that family because that was a blessing. I mean, new names were written down in the book of life that day. So you never know what could come out of a little nudge. So, and then to kind of end, I just wanted to say, well, first let me read my verse, actually. It was Ephesians 2, verse 19. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God. And then just to end, God kind of has been speaking to me since we've been back about just like feeling that it's really time for all of us to get serious about our relationship with him. And that, you know, like, I think we all get into going through the motions real easy. And that's not what it's about. You know, we're called to be set apart from other people. And another thing that he's kind of been laying on me is just really a sense of urgency to share the gospel with everybody that we can. Like, you guys know that sometimes it's really easy to do down there. But this is where we spend most of our time, is here at home. And we need to be doing this kind of stuff here too. Especially because, you know, he's coming back soon and people need to know about him before it's too late. So I think he just really wanted me to share that too. But if you're thinking about going, do it. Follow that nudge to go, because you'll get a blessing out of it.
I left something out, and I'll be real quick. Rose, thank you so much for my cards and the prayers the week that we were there, and I really appreciate them, and they were such a blessing each day. And I got excited and started talking and didn't look at my notes, so thank you.
This picture is just of me and a little girl named Katrina, and she just stole my heart. She had these long black curls, and she was just really sweet. But as you all know, this was my first time going to Nicaragua, and you know, I was nervous and didn't know what to expect. But once I got there, you know, I was very humbled when we went to all the villages. Just seeing the children's faces when they would throw out a piece of candy or anything, they just would smile from, you know, ear to ear, and sometimes they would chase us, our trucks, just to get another piece of candy or something, and just handing out the manifest bags, knowing that that bag could feed one family for a month maybe. So I mean, it was just unreal. Renee and I, we got to the privilege of working with the doctor 3 days down there, and she saw about Well, the first day she saw like 55 kids, and then 30-some the next 2 days. And she would see them, and then she would write out their prescription. And actually, Renee, I said I was the bag girl, because Renee would find, she got really good at finding all the different prescriptions, and we would bag them up, and they were so appreciative of that. I mean, every one of them, you know, just went on and thanked us and everything. But my God moment came on Thursday when we visited the villages and split up. And I'm kind of like Deb and Tay. I was in TJ's group, so I was like, oh yeah, TJ will do it for us. Brooke and I can just follow along, and we won't have to say anything. And believe it or not, you all that know me know that I can talk a lot, but I'm a private Christian. If that's a thing? I mean, I don't like to pray out loud, and I try to show my Christianness, I guess, in ways, you know, I do talk about God to people, but I'm not comfortable like sharing a big thing or something like that. So anyway, we got to the first house, and TJ said, Pam, you want to go first? I said, no, you'll go first. And at that point, I knew I was going to have to share the gospel. So anyway, TJ went ahead and went first, and then we went to the next house, and Brooke shared the gospel. So we walked down the street a ways and turned the corner, and this little lady was sitting out front. She was out there mending something, sewing. And Roberto went with us through, and he asked her if we could share the gospel. And she was sitting in a little plastic outdoor chair, and she got up and motioned for me to sit down, and I said, no. She went in the house and got a chair for all of us. So we all sat down, and I shared the gospel with her, and I've just felt God at that moment come down and say, you can do this. You can do this. And I did it, and then I prayed. And that was God right there. I mean, he was there with me. And back in the village, when we were at the compound, different people would pray. And they would say, well, who wants to pray today? And I would kind of like, not me, you know. I don't want to pray. But after that, I actually did pray some when we were together. So that was my God moment. And I'm pretty sure I was the one that took COVID with me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because the next day, we had 2 more in the family test positive for COVID. So I'm sorry that I took it to you all. What? Oh, I forgot. Sorry. I'm sorry. Well, both of these I thought were very apt, you know, because I did do something that I wasn't comfortable doing. So the first one was, for I can do anything through Christ who strengthens me, Philippians 4:13. And the other one was actually, it was Philippians 12. But I would ye should understand with that's not the right one. I'm sorry, that's not the right one. I told you the wrong one. The one I wanted was, and I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that has happened to me here has helped to spread the good news.
All right, the far right picture will make sense at the end of this. So before we went, I made up some Roman Road to Salvation maps that TJ gave us a long time ago when he was doing a Wednesday night study. So I thought, all right, I got those in English. I need them in Spanish. So I went word for word and kind of made this into Spanish. So I took a bunch of Spanish ones with us, not knowing that we were going to do discipleship training and that Don's number one go-to was the Romans Road to Salvation. So I had those. So we gave those out to all of our groups that were going out door to door on that Thursday. So we got to go to El Laredo. El Laredo is one of my favorites. I was told we were going there, and then Roberto tricked me and said we wasn't going there, and I was kind of like upset and like, why are we not going there? And then we take off on the bus, and everybody else knew but me, but we were going to El Laredo. So, when we go to El Laredo, I got 3 things on my mind that I wanted to accomplish that day. One of them was going door to door and sharing the gospel with people. The second one was to find my barber ever, because I hadn't cut my hair that week, so I was going to find him. He's the guy that cut my hair in June, so I was going to find Ever. And the third thing was, Jody asked me if I could run into Nelson to give him a hug and to give him a $20 bill. So that was my 3 things that we needed to do. So Addison, AC, myself, and Tita, the translator, was their group. So we get off the bus there, and we're going down, and we just start right there. We go into a house, and I start with them, and I'm talking to them, and we're asking if do they attend the local church? Well, they all agreed that they did, that they go very often to the church. So we asked them if they need to pray about anything, and they just wanted to pray for their family and for health. So we did that. Then we go to another house, and it was the same thing. They've been going to church. They go to the pastor that's there. So AC or Addison, I don't know which one, done a phenomenal job, and she talked to them and asked them what they need to pray for, and she done it. Addison, at the next one, we done the same thing. So we're kind of at the end of the road, and we're at the soccer field. So I kind of know this village, even though I've only been there one time, like it's the back of my hand. So we take off through the soccer field, we go down, and the pig's there again. AC takes a picture of it, and we get to Ever's house. Well, his barbershop's not set up. I'm like, man, he's moved. He's not here anymore. Because in San Francisco, a little boy that I'd met this summer, he was gone. He was in the United States now. So I was like, man, this guy's gone too. So I asked, I'm like, hey, anybody seen Ever? And they said, well, he's working today. I said, okay. So it was a group of them, and there was probably, how many people? 5? 9. And they're around right here. So I just start talking to them, and I'm like, do y'all attend the church here? He said, we've not been for a very long time. I said, okay. So I said, all right, this is my opportunity. And we're there, and I told AC, I said, this is it. This is our opportunity to share and to be able to talk to them. So I start talking to them and ask them, what's going on in your life? What's wrong? And they're praying about sickness and health and everything. And I said, we're going to talk about the Romans road to salvation today. So we went through every scripture. I went through Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We went to Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Then we went to 5:8. But God commandeth his love toward us, in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And then we went to Romans 10:9. That if thou shalt confess with the mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart of man believeth unto unrighteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. And then we ended with Romans 10:13. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. So we done that, and I started praying. And I really felt like it could be, I felt like it was a long time. And it probably was. Was it a long time, AC? It was pretty good, TJ. Like, I got into one of yours up here, and I could just feel it, and I could just feel the Holy Spirit coming about me. And we done that, and we left, and we walked, and I was like, all right, we've come here and we've done what we accomplished, so I'm going to see I'm going to find Nelson. I couldn't find Ever. I'm going to go see if I can help Jody out. Well, Nelson actually didn't live in El Dorado. He's just been there twice that we've been there. He lives on up to another village. He was visiting his grandmother every time we've been there in the summer. So I didn't get to see Nelson for Jody. But on the way back, this lady comes and she's running. She's like, come here, come here. So I'm like, all right. So we go. And my buddy Ever, he was working. And they got a hold of him somehow. I don't know if somebody went. I don't know what they done. But they went to find him. And he come back and he said, I never thought I'd see you again. I said, I told you when I left in June that I'd be back. But I said, I thought you were working. He said, they told me you was here. I had to come. I wanted to come and see you. I said, well, I'm glad you did. So I gave him a hat. I don't know how much money he lost by coming and visiting me and not working, so I gave him a $20 bill too. But to go on with all this being said, and by the way, this end picture is the guy that raised his hand for Devontae. When we were on the back of the bus getting the hat, he's the one that accepted Christ that day. Devontae didn't have a picture, so I had a feeling you might do that, so I put the picture up there for you. But I go on with saying this was how awesome this was with this gentleman getting saved. How awesome it was to seeing my buddy that I hadn't seen since June. All right? But I told everybody during my God moment that night, I said, we get excited about going to a sporting event. We get excited about pulling for our team that we love. We get excited about seeing somebody that we've not seen for a long time. But here is what we've got to be excited about and we've got to look forward to. And my verse comes out of 1 Thessalonians 4. I'm going to go 14 through 18. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. So my thought on this was that night is we get excited over all of this, the sporting events, and we go and we do that on a nightly basis. And it's great. I'm not taking nothing away from that. Then we get excited about seeing this. But guys, Jesus is coming back one day. We got to go share this. We got to go talk to somebody and tell them. We need them to be ready with us whenever Jesus decides to come. We all have to be ready. We have to make sure that we're sharing that for everybody.
So that great reunion day, that was one of the most meaningful God moments we had during the week. The guy, he just messed. You see, that means that God has used you to make an impact when somebody will leave their workplace because they thought they weren't going to see you again just to come see you. That's giving people something they couldn't get anywhere else. And the Bible does promise us, as Stevie was telling us, there's going to be a great reunion day. And one day we're going to be reunited with Christ. So we need to be ready. And one thing Brooke said, that and this is one point I wanted to end with. The ability to share the gospel is not your ability. The Holy Spirit is the one who shares the gospel. God just uses you to do it. If we think, when I'm preaching or if we think we're the ones doing it, it's going to fall flat. But the Holy Spirit empowers you to share the gospel. It's not you doing it, but God. Just be open to do it. So I thought that was good. And you heard one thing we didn't say, if you did give money, when we first go over, we buy a chest of medicine, a big chest of medicine, and we ran out of a lot of the prescriptions when we went there this time. And so the doctor sees so many kids in the villages. So thank you for supporting that. Just trying to let you know what all that happens when we go over. As you can see, God moved in a great way. We are going back. I think me and Roz is going back maybe in a couple months. So if you might want to go, you can talk to us. Maybe we could work it out, but we are going back in June, I think. So we'd like for you to stick around if you got time tonight. And we got food. I think they went to get it. We got some food that's going to be in the back. You can ask questions, fellowship, talk to somebody, because that's one thing the church is missing. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your prayers. And Brother John?
I just want to let the people who went know who gave their cards. Ross, card was done by Felix Collins.
Okay.
And AC's card was done by Diana Sager. And, well, Addison, we know Whitney did those. Renee was Rose. Pam was Katie England. And Devontae was Rick Collins. Brooks was Devin Collins.
And mine was Lisa.
And yours is Lisa.
I knew Brooks was Deb's when you read it up here. I can tell you sometimes, but
Stevie was, I'm sorry, Stevie was Steve Brooks.
Steve Brooks. Okay. And as Michelle is saying there, I can't stress enough to everybody that's here the impact that our church makes when we go over there. And you're a part of that. You have to go over to see it. And Michelle, God used her as an instrument to start this because, as I've told you before, I didn't like missionaries. I wouldn't even meet with Don when he came to speak to the church. The group. Remember that? I said, I got a ball game or something. I didn't like missionaries. I never thought I was going to go. But God started pulling my heart to go. And then Michelle come to me one day and said, hey, have you ever thought about going on a mission trip? I said, no, yes.
I said, if you go, I'll go.
Yes.
And you pretty immediately said yes.
Yeah.
But then I'll never forget Renee was talking about, Renee's like, I mean, I can't, now TJ won't go, and he won't go do that. That's so scary. I'm so scared. I'm scared for y'all.
But
God can change your heart.
yes. And the guy named Wes that went, he went on the first trip and he called us tag-alongs. We got down there and he was talking about, he said, Mount Olive was a tag-along when we went. And he said, now we're their tag-alongs and we're learning from them. So we are thankful for what the church is doing. And I do want to say, if you feel the nudge to go on this or one of the Samaritan's Purse trips or whatever, if you feel that nudge to go, you need to be obedient. He'll work all things for good. Obedience brings blessing. Obedience brings blessing, okay? Let's all stand, and we're going to ask Brother John, would you do the honor of concluding our service and praying the blessing over the food, please?